Okay, today we are going to talk about the Buddhism and then Buddhism on the West. Okay, in the West. So basics. Before we start, let's go over what we are doing. The schedule we have doing the Asian philosophy meetup every Saturday, 1 p.m. Pacific time. We try to do it within 2 hours, and then so far so good. We do it in 2 hours plus. So I think last 2 weeks we have been done a lot of heavy reading, reading the Confucius analog about the Ren, and then we all last week we also read the Dao De Jing, about 8 chapters. Right? So next week, Pin is going to talk about Chinese literature and philosophy. That's about, I think some people ask about why we don't have a Chinese philosophy or reading, after 2,000 years. Okay, so always talk about ancient. So this one, Pin agreed to introduce a famous writing, poet, okay, prose, Ode of Redcliffe, and it's very difficult. So please be patient and please make sure you do your homework. It's about Chinese history background, literature, and the writing is short, but it's include Taoism thinking, Buddhism thinking, and of course, Confucius thinking on that. So just be patient, and then we will try on this one for next week. And on October, we have a full schedule on October, and the beginning of October, I'm going to introduce the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, we are going to start to do other areas. So Bhagavad Gita is the one I have been spent 18 weeks to join the meetup to read word by word from beginning. But I have another person, our member, Schumann, and he agreed to make a presentation to give us an overview about Bhagavad Gita. Since I think that's important to understand Buddhism, because after I went through the Bhagavad Gita reading, I find out that I understand Buddhism philosophy much better. So I think it's a help. Doesn't matter what's your purpose, but at least to me, that's great. Yeah. And then we are going to I think last time a lot of people talk about art of war and the 36 stratagems, and we only do the art of war partially, and we have no chance to do the stratagems. So this time I'm going to reverse the order. Okay, I'm going to start from 36 stratagems, and then see how much we go and what kind of interest. Then we will move to the art of war, and then kind of like finish the section I plan to do in August 21st. Then I will do, I haven't decided yet, but probably will start to introduce Neo-Confucianism and the Neo-Taoism. Okay, then we're going to, there's another major school we haven't touched yet, which is Moism. And at the end of October, we have Dr. A professional speaker, Dr. What's his name? Dr. Shiva? Ravi? Okay, yeah, and he is coming to introduce about the Muslim Islamic philosophy, okay, and end of October. Okay, so that's the plan. Okay, so I hope everybody see the idea here. We try to cover the entire Asian, and then anybody has any suggestion or any person can introduce, and that'd be great. We will try to fit in the schedule and cover this one. So any question about schedule and our plan? We have a few minutes. No? Okay. So today we are going to Nari, please. Nari, your hands up. Oh.
No, I was just wondering if you missed one of the lectures. Is it on YouTube? Like, could you see it on YouTube after?
Yes, usually I will put in the YouTube. But some are missing. Well, I think the old one are missing. I think since in September or June, I put all of them. But I think one are missing. The reason not my fault. If I depend on.
And so where would you find it, under your name, or?
No. Okay. So that's one thing I'd like to show. If you go to the website, okay, that's it. Okay, that's next week's. Week. You go to the website. Okay, if you move down, you see here's the Discord. If you want to go to Discord, you can find all the information. But I know a lot of people don't want to go to Discord, but you can come here to the end here. Okay, if you click this one, let me show you. Okay, if you click this one is another. Okay, so here is our full schedule. Okay, so from June 12th to today, we are doing the this one, Buddha Travel West, right? So we have the reading material meetup. If you go to the YouTube, then you will click. And some are missing because I haven't put there yet. Okay, so so
excellent. Yeah.
Okay. So you will see that. Okay, so I try to do it, and give me usually the weekend I'm quite busy, so give me a few days. So I will put a PowerPoint file. I will put the reading material. I try to organize everything, but sometimes I'm late, and then if I sometimes think about I should hire an assistant to help me, but it's it's all part of it.
Well,
so somebody want to volunteer to be my administrator, that'd be great. Help me.
I have a question.
Excuse me?
I have a question. Are you a professor elsewhere, or do you just do the meetup?
Oh,
like, do you teach this stuff?
No. We are not professor. I don't have a doctorate degree. I know Pin has a doctorate degree, but I don't. But he's not in literature. He's in more high tech. So we're all amateur. So we just have interest to introduce and bring everybody together. And I think it's very meaningful in our life and then for everybody. And I see everybody are so interest involved, and then that's my happiness coming.
I like to say that you're doing a mighty fine job. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for supporting, because I'm so proud. We always have so many people join, and so far we already have 34. And then right now it's a lot of meetup in the internet. So and a lot of meetup only have a few people, but I think we are the one of the great. So thank you everybody, and that's made me feel worth it. Okay, so today we are going to talk about the Westernized Buddhism. Okay, before I start, then I just like to make it clear about Buddhism, because Buddhism is not one religion or one school. There's many schools. So it starts from India and then get popular in China, and then from China to Korea to Japan to Southeast Asia and Vietnam, and then they have another route going from the south and go to the Cambodia, Thailand, and they all complicate, and then also travel to West. And since Buddhism has no central governance, there's unlike a Christian, or there's no systematic writing, and so it becomes every time you go to different place, adapt to the local need or local culture. So it's become very different in different ways. So it's meaningful to study different Buddhism. So whenever you learn from Buddhism, actually it's only to represent the local. Okay. So today we are going to focus on what happened in the West. Okay. Mainly we talk about America. So if you know Buddhism, go to China, become different. Go to Korean, go to Japan, they all have a different flavor. And when they come to America, the difference become much bigger. So, Sarah, you had your hands up.
Yeah, so I just had a question. So you mentioned that there's no systemized method for Buddhism. Is there, so there's no sacred, or in other words, sacred book that the Buddhists refer to? Or is it more of several writings that there's no one book like the Bible, the Torah, the etc.? Is there any book like that for Buddhism?
No. Okay, so that's my answer. No. Okay, so I truly believe it's no. Okay, if somebody tell you yes, then please ask that person. That's my opinion. I will say no. And if you were not here, but like 2 months ago, I introduced a very short writing called Heart Sutra. Okay, that's only have a 270 character in Chinese, or equivalently 270 something English word, and we read that in detail. So that's the one I will not consider the canon or the holy Sanskrit, but that's, in my point of view, is the most recited, okay, sutra. Okay, if you, Sarah, if you are interested, you can go to the YouTube or to search for Heart Sutra. That's very short, and but again, that's not the standard or whatever. They have many different translation, so you can look at get a flavor on that. But you know, and Lotus Sutra, that's also another one. A lot of people read it, but again, that's what I'm talking about is based on my understanding, and which is more on the Mahayana. Okay, so they have a different thing. So before we start, and then I know people have a very wild, a very different background about the Buddhism, and some probably already practiced for many years, and some probably very new on that. So I just get a quick overview on the Buddhism. So basics, they have, we can roughly talk about, they have the 3 schools, okay, which I'm talking about mostly because I'm from Taiwan, mostly Mahayana Buddhism. Okay, so basics is popular in China, Japan, Korean, you know, and Taiwan, all these places. That's all so-called the Mahayana. But the original, the Gautama Buddha teaching is being considered as a school of elders, which is Theravada. Okay. Theravada in some translation as Hinayana. But I don't see that's a proper translation. That means small vehicle, and nobody want to be called small. So that's a kind of wrong name. So the proper name should be Theravada. So that should be the original teaching. So I will look at like Theravada is like Judaism, and the Mahayana like a New Testament, okay, a kind of new revolution. And sometimes we separate another one called Diamond Vehicle, or so-called Vajrayana, which is popular in so-called Tantric Buddhism, which is in Tibet. Okay, so today we will talk about a little bit because Dalai Lama is from this area. So you will see how different in the school and in the Buddhism school, and then when each of these one come to America, okay, they all take a different form. So we will see, I think if you read today's paper, and I think this paper doing a pretty good job to give an overview about what's happening in Buddhism's influence in America. We can take a non-religious point of view. So that's kind of like ABC of the Buddhism. And then, of course, if you just like Sarah asked, you know, they have the central something, you know, central teaching. Basically, we can call it the 4 Noble Truths. Okay, so that's kind of the original teaching, talk about the suffering, okay, which is dukkha. Okay, so the word is suffering, and the why karma, and how does the everything happen, okay, and what's the purpose is nirvana. Okay, we need to stop this the samsara, okay, which is reincarnation. You were reborn and reborn, and they have different way to a noble path, okay, to teach you. So that's all the fundamental. But since it moved to different place, this kind of fundamental teaching just sitting in the background and is not, being talked too much. And this one, especially in the Westernized Buddhism, probably not talking about this at all. So, Pin, please.
I have a follow-up question to Sarah's question. So it is true that there's not one sutra that's considered sacred above all, but are there particular schools of Buddhism that consider a particular sutra to be most important or sacred? Because for example, in China, there are all these different branches, Zen Buddhism being one of them, and there's like Tiantai Zong, Weishi Zong, Jingtu Zong. So are there particular ones, a particular sect that might hold a particular sutra as the sacred one?
Yeah, the answer is yes. The answer is yes. Okay, but for example, like a Lotus Sutra, okay, that's I think there's a Tiantai or something they focus on, and the different school have a different focus on that. But Lotus Sutra basics is also being read for many different schools. It's complex. Before I thought I know everything, but when I get into then I find out, okay, I'm not going. Before I'm thinking about, I think that when I first time try to introduce Buddhism in this meetup, I try to draw a chart of different school, and then I start to dip in and I find out, spend hours. I'm still looking for different information. So it's complex. So I draw the conclusion is every single Buddhism teaching is serve as introduction. So when you listen to a lecture about Buddhism teaching, when you walk out the classroom, okay, you are not graduate. You just finish the introduction, and the rest is your job. That's why every school, every temple, and they have the different kind of idea. So last time we talked about the first part. We talked about Socrates and the Zen, and then we talked about the koan, and I remember I prepared 10 koan to talk. I only finished 5. Okay, so so I decided to reverse the order. Let's read this paper first, and then if we have time, we can go on the koan exercise. Rubena, please.
But in all of them, Buddha is worshipped?
Yeah, okay, that
I guess you could use worship as a context to appreciate the teachings from older ancestors. Like a lot of it is trial and error philosophy. So the key is to pass down the knowledge. So I guess worshiping is an okay word.
yeah, I think we have Audrey want to answer the question. Audrey, please.
I never thought of it as worship. I find it interesting because one can worship the Buddha. I'm more interested in the philosophy and the practices that help you work with your mind and use the Buddha as, I guess, an inspiration. But the aspects that you're trying to actually work with and cultivate in your own individual lives. But I can't remember, that wasn't was my question, that came later. So now I'm confused. Oh, I wanted to ask a question about Pali. Is that not considered one text for most sects, or am I wrong about that?
I have an answer on this. Okay, if you for the Theravada, okay, that's the original Buddhism teaching, which is in Pali. Okay, the language in Pali. Okay, so when we go to the Mahayana, okay, the language is Sanskrit. So you will see the two differences. And I think today I will introduce a little bit of both Theravada and Mahayana come to America. So their text is different. One is Pali, one is Sanskrit.
I see. So
Yeah. Yeah, and then if you look at the Dalai Lama, okay, which supposedly should be considered as Mahayana, but I think that's my own theory. It's so close to India and so close to the original Gautama Buddha's place. So
Right.
I think it takes a lot of mystic, also take a lot of Theravada's thinking. So they focus a lot on meditation. So that's kind of mixed. So I would like to separate them as Vajrayana, but
Okay.
a different way. Okay, thank you. We have Pins and Ruben. Pins, please.
Well, the question on worship, to me, it seems like Buddhism is kind of like Taoism in this way. There's like the intellectual, philosophical Buddhism, and there's the Buddhism for the masses. I mean, you go to Buddhist temples, you see, especially the popular ones, people there mostly are worshiping, and I'm not quite sure how much they're really thinking about the Buddhist philosophy. Many of them are there to pray for good luck, pray for fertility.
I can't wait. Yeah, I can't wait to hear about each of these schools. Are we going to go over those?
Hold on,
As to what makes up Buddhism and like what are the founding principles? And I'm excited to dive into that.
Yeah. Wait. Let Pin finish. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. So anyway, that's all I wanted to comment on. It's kind of a complicated question. Depends on what aspect of Buddhism you're really asking about. That's all.
Yeah, thank you, Pin. That's a good point because because we are in the self-select group, right? So we are more in the philosophical focus. So sometimes I go to different group in the Sunday morning in New York. They have a lot of Buddhism group. They are not worshiping, but they do a lot of practice. Okay, so they are different. You will see the different focus. Okay, I also go with them to read the sutra, and sometimes they invite the master to give us a talk. So I listen that, and that's a different thing. Okay, and then if you go to, let's say, Taiwan, okay, there's a Buddhist temple, and they are doing worship, and they have a different purpose. Okay, so I think the focus on worship is so-called the Pure Land. Okay, so the Pure Land is doing more worship. So it's very different. And then quickly answer Rubana's question. Okay, the answer could be no, or to introduce all the Buddhism school, because that's so many. Okay, that's so many, and everyone I introduce, and everyone can find the one to refute what I said. So at least I'm not going to do it. And if somebody said,
I hope we're gonna address what Buddhism is. Is that part of the agenda?
Okay,
and
I think
what makes up Buddhism?
Okay, Rubana, let me ask you this. I think that will be as difficult as I try to understand Muslim, okay, Islamic religion, okay. So over the time, and the same as Hinduism, okay, it's not easy, okay, because every religion we have has been practiced for over 1,000 years. It's no way for us to sit there and spend 2 hours, 5 hours, 20 hours, 100 hours, and they say, hi, I got it. So I would believe constantly join the meetup, and from time to time, if you been seen many times, you will start to get the feeling what it is. So that's my idea. And everybody are welcome to do your own research and your own reading. If you see something is interesting or some lecture you think is very helpful, please do send a message to me, and then I will try to organize. And if somebody is good in talking about this, then I'm happy to bring the person in and then help us understand. That's the purpose. Okay, I assume we are done with, but anyway, today's focus is
I'm
not
sorry,
on.
Jason. I was not interrupting you, so please You thought I was interrupting you. I was not interrupting you.
No. Okay, sorry. Yeah, but I just have to say one more time. Sometimes I sound like interrupt people. Okay, but I have learned the lesson. Sometimes I have to control my timing, because if I let everybody go or then ask any kind of question, sometimes we only finish 1/3 or only 10% of what I'm going to do, and then it's not fair for the people not speak. So please don't take personally. Okay, if I remind everybody, make it short comment. If I ask anybody to focus on the text, or I interrupt, and please don't take personally, because I'm looking at my watch. I want to go through the flow. Yeah. So and I hope everybody understands the situation. But again, I like to focus. Today we are not talking about what is Buddhism. Okay. We are going to talk about the Buddhism in the Wasteland through the history. If you read the paper, okay, they have it. I think the paper is pretty good to make a few key landmark about the Buddhism. So let me quickly go over what we are going to talk about today. Okay, so basics, that's my goal. I want to talk about basic, follow the paper, the assigned reading. First, we talk about the T.S. Eliot, Wasteland, and he mentioned about Hindu thinking about Shanti, and talk about Schopenhauer. He's the first major Western philosopher. Talk about the Buddhism, Hinduism teaching. Then we are going to talk about how does the mindful meditation come into West, and then a few important figures. One is the Daisaku Suzuki. He introduced the Zen Buddhism in the early 20th century to America. And then Dalai Lama, that's in recent day, and the compassion about Buddhism. And then today in the Buddhism has been used as therapy. And then another thing is about the equity, because I believe because Dalai Lama and other Buddhist monk kind of Western Buddhism become a secular ethic teaching. So, and then we can talk about the future Buddhism, because if you see the background, Buddhism has been like, it's not being the white developed like a branch. Okay, when they move to one place, they have new thinking coming out. So it will not surprise if then Buddhism come to America 200 years from now. We have a totally different theory, different idea of Buddhism. We may not be, we are not able to see it, but we can kind of think about what's going on in our future generation, what's going on in America, the Buddhism. Any comment? Otherwise, we're going to start our main idea of this one.
I want to comment and say that I like the Dalai Lama's research into cosmology and the cosmos of the space. I like that.
Jimmy, please hold then, because we have a different, that's why I show this schedule. So please hold if you have the Dalai Lama or about Zen Suzuki. So that's when we do one thing that's focus on the one we are talking about, so we can focus on the thing we are talking. So some will have a much longer conversation, some will be very short, I believe, depending on everybody's interest. Thank you. Rubana, please.
Just one follow-up question to Ping and a side note. The follow-up question is, Ping, when you said these temples, they go and they're asking, I'm not sure, I don't remember the exact what you said, when they're asking for something good, who are they praying to if not Buddha? Then are they praying to their ancestors? I mean, people must be asking it from a higher power. So that's my question. My side note is, you know what bothers me about Buddhism? Siddhartha Buddha looked like me. He was an Indian. But when you look at all his images, he's Chinese. So he should be brown like me and not look like Jason or Ping.
Actually, yes. So okay, again, I know very little about Buddhism, so I can only give a superficial answer of what I see.
Everybody.
So I walk into a Buddhist temple, there are many deities. And I think there are, how do you say pusa in English, Jason? Bodhisattvas?
Buddhistravas.
Buddhistravas. I think they're mostly Buddhistravas, and there are also another class. They're like the Luohan or Jinggang. I think they're the protectors.
Yeah.
And those are what people are worshiping. And it's unfortunate that the images you see in the West are very fair-skinned, but if you actually go to China, most of the statues I see are actually not Chinese looking at all. And as you say, represented as, I would say, as a lot more of what Indians would look like. Brown skin and, the features. And there's still a lot of things that are in Sanskrit. So those are my quick answers. Did I answer your question?
Sorry, can I say something to Jason? Could we please listen to your slides first and maybe hold the questions at the end, because it's like so distracting and we're not getting into what you're trying to present to us because of all these questions coming in. I think it would be much better to leave the questions to the end.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. But yes. I thank you, Nari. Yeah. Quick answer is Buddhism is very difficult. Actually, it's very difficult. It's for example, like how does it look like? Okay, that's also very difficult. For example, the Alotiki Ishtava, so-called Guanyin, okay, it is a male, okay, but turn out to be female in China. So we can talk about this one forever. Okay, so let's put on hold on this one, and let's continue. Loanne, you have a question, or you want to comment on something?
I just want to make a brief comment as to, I think somebody asked the question as why Buddha doesn't look Indian like her. And in my opinion, I don't think anybody knows what Buddha actually looked like. So when Buddhism traveled outside of India to China or to Thailand or to Japan, the people that embraced the religion made it their own. And then they made Buddha to look like a figure like them, to someone that they can relate to. It's more of a symbolism and a figure than the actual depiction of what Buddha actually looked like in person. Because honestly, nobody knows what Buddha looked like, his facial feature or structure, or how tall he is, or if he's thin, or if he's overweight, etc. And that's just a quick note.
Yeah, that's a sentence like Malcolm X complained about like why Jesus is brown, right? So Jesus is from the Pakistan. How can he look like European, right? Same question. And I have a different idea about Buddhism look, because I look at the Alexander the Great, when he invaded India, he left some craftsmen, the carpenter, the sculpture over there. So you will see the Buddhism have a little bit, Greek flavor, So that's my own theory, but it may not.
Sorry, Buddhism, it was Siddhartha Gautama. He was an Indian prince, and he was the one who, started Buddhism because of what the suffering he saw with people. So we know he was from that part of India. I'm trying to recall the name. I actually visited it. So anyway, I just don't want to take away from your lecture. I'm just very anxious to hear what you have to say. Thanks.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And then again, I just want to clarify, this one is usually we are not doing the lecture, and then I just host the discussion. That's why, and then everybody's opinion will consider equivalent important. Okay. So I'm not expert on the Buddhism teaching. Everybody just share what you know. Okay, let's start. Okay, so first, the author compare with the Wasteland, the T.S. Eliot point talk about, and the point is long point, and they end with shanty 3 times, and then he is means the inner peace. Okay, so that's it. Anybody read this one and want to share about the what's Eliot's Wasteland? No, nobody read this one. Nobody read the Wasteland. I think that's an interesting point, and then I think he do it in the second after First World War, and then he kind of like look at same as Freud, right? He during the after First World War and they feel like it's their concern is the discontent about the Western civilization. So they kind of look at the Eastern philosophy as palliation. Okay, find the refugees there and hope to kind of find the inner peace. That's my thinking. Madeline, please.
Yes, I've read The Wasteland. I've read it more than once. It's really a classic of Western poetry. If you haven't read it, it's easy for everyone to find. The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot. It's online. You can find the whole poem. And it comes in 4 parts. Part 1 is the burial of the dead. Part 2 is called A Game of Chess. Part 3 is called The Fire Sermon. And part 4 is called Death by Water. 5 is What the Thunder Said. Sorry, I was thinking of 4 quartets. Okay, and anyway, it does end with Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. There are references to Western classics as well. There are some Greek references and other things, references to English poetry. And it's one of the more famous poems in the English language and is frequently quoted. If anyone here has ever heard the phrase, April is the cruelest month, it starts with that line.
Yes, thank you, Madeline. Yeah, that's April is the cruelest month, breeding. That's the first line, and the last line is shanty. Yeah, so it's good to read it. Yeah, it's not that long. It's long, but it's not that long. And he is 1949 Nobel Prize laureate. So yeah. It's worth it to read. Okay, anything on this one? Otherwise, let's move on. Okay, second, we talk about, the author talk about Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer is the one we will consider the major Western philosopher, talk about the Buddhism. So he probably the early one to include Buddhism in his writing. And the mystic Schopenhauer wrote is opposed to the philosopher by the fact that he begins from within, whereas the philosopher begins from without. He talked about the Western, and the Eastern is from within. While the Western will be preoccupied with objective knowledge and the control of external nature, the East will engage with inner wisdom and the power of being. That's the authors I copy from the reading. Anybody want to share about the Schopenhauer, about the Buddhism? So one thing I like to share is about in Schopenhauer's the writing, one chapter called The Fullness of Nothingness. I think this one, that's the very last paragraph. I think his writing is kind of, you know, he is coming after Kant. So according to the author, he has two statues. One is Buddha, one is Kant on his desk. Okay, so that means these two is in his mind. And I think this paragraph kind of describes what's Schopenhauer's opinion about. He's thinking about nothingness and the will. And that's he draw the conclusion here. We have to banish the dark impression of the nothingness, which as the final goal hovers behind all virtue and holiness, which we feel as children for darkness. We must not even evade it, as the Indians do, by myths and meaningless words, such as reabsorption in Brahman or Nirvana of Buddhism. Okay, so he kind of reject the Indian idea of Brahman. Okay, so and also reject the Buddhism's concept of Nirvana. Okay, Nirvana means, okay, if for somebody not familiar with Buddhism, that's that's a common thought between Indian and Buddhism thinking. Samsara, because we Indian and the Buddhism all believe, okay, the life is a reincarnation. After you die, you will reborn. Could be a person, could become a king, could become a rat, become a cat, a dog, and the dog may reborn to a person, all depend on your karma. And the Buddhism teaching is get out of this cycle. So Buddhism call it the nirvana. Okay. So here, Schopenhauer kind of reject the concept of nirvana. Okay. And he also reject, okay, the Hinduism teach as Brahman. Brahman we can consider as oneness of the global soul. Okay, so our individual soul is Atma. Okay, we have an individual soul when we die, and all part of the big soul of Brahman. Okay, so if you have a question, you want to know the detail, we will discuss on the first week of October when we talk about the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, that's another thing. And later on, I think that's interesting. That's also related to, we are talking 2 months ago, we talked about the Heart Sutra. Okay, that's the last sentence Schopenhauer he wrote. This is also the prajna paramita of the Buddhist, the beyond all knowledge. In other words, the point where subject and object no longer exist. So if you remember or you read the Heart Sutra, okay, the topic basis talking about prajna paramita, which is the highest wisdom and the wisdom beyond all. Para means pre or transcendent. Okay, jna, J-N-A means wisdom. So beyond all knowledge, beyond all wisdom. And then in Schopenhauer's explanation, he kind of not agree with nirvana, this kind of negative way. He kind of embrace, okay, to transcend our wisdom to a higher level, which is prajna paramita, and then to beyond.
Who is that again? What was that guy's name? I'm sorry.
Okay, hold on. Okay, so he tried to beyond the traditional Western subject and object view of our exist. Okay, so that's Schopenhauer's view on the Western. Okay, so Sarah, you have a question?
You just answered. No, just pretend I never.
Okay. Yeah, okay, because right now we are talking about the Schopenhauer. Okay. Any comment about the Schopenhauer on Buddhism? I think the key here is talking about the objective knowledge and the control the external nature. That's kind of like our the Western tradition, okay, and then the Indian or East tradition, more on the inner wisdom and the power of being. So one way to talk about is in the Western, probably focus more on knowing, and the Eastern focus more on the being. So these are the two concepts being. I'm not saying, you know, one is doing knowing only, not being. One is doing being only, but it's the starting point, and focus is different. So we have hands up, Claudia and Audrey. Claudia, please.
Yes, Jason, do you believe that Schopenhauer was influential in secularizing Buddhism in the West?
You mean me, my opinion?
Sure, why not?
Okay, my opinion is he is, I don't count him as, I think he just look at very superficially and just bring into his Western. I don't see he do any serious work. And the person who did the serious work is Suzuki and the Dalai Lama. Okay, so that's my personal opinion. But you know, so I hope I answer your question. Audrey, please.
Yes.
Yeah, I never heard of Schopenhauer when I was first practicing Buddhism or went to any of the teachings, so I don't know. I found this particular article, though, that you scheduled for today's reading to be really one of the few about Buddhism in the West that actually resonates with my own personal experience of the different teachers that I've been with. So, but what's interesting about the Schopenhauer is once I started getting involved with philosophy, I read this, and I remember I wrote a paper in college at one point about Marxism and Freud talking to a Buddhist practitioner. Like, I don't remember who I chose. It might have been the Dalai Lama, but it was sort of like a play, and everything was based on, you know, Marxism thought everything was outside, Freud thought everything came from within, and then the Dalai Lama or whoever was I had in that play was talking about a very different within than Freud, and definitely talking, you know, they had this conversation between him and Marx, which was so much closer than because what Marx was hoping for apparently was something that Buddhism, that the Mahayanas call for, and but starting from yourself and within, and then working without, going without. But so anyway, but Schopenhauer made me want to look into his that giant book he has, The Will and Representation. My God, I was like, I needed to be inspired to open it because I got to the first few pages and it was like so dense. So now I'm going to do that again. I have it on my bookshelf and I'm inspired to read it now again.
Yeah, I also want to read it, but I'm not like you. I read from the backward, so that's why I got this. So anyway, I hope we finish. You know, you're doing from beginning, I'm doing from the end. Then we can call for a meeting. So thank you, Audrey. We have Sujit, please.
Hi, Jason. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you.
Just a quick note. I was wondering if you have any inputs on Zen Buddhism and how it's like kind of spread in the West, specifically like around California and that side. And also around, like I was reading this book recently called When You Greet Me, I Bow by Norman Fisher. And it seemed as if like Norman Fisher has been doing a lot of work pertaining to Zen Buddhism. So I was just wondering what your note is and how prevalent Zen Buddhism has spread around the States and maybe even like North America in general. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will talk about Suzuki today. Okay, so again, I'd like to mention Zen Buddhism is part of Mahayana school, but Zen Buddhism itself, okay, also have many schools. Okay, so that's, you can see how complex it is. So everything I present here, it just represent one school I familiar or I find out, you know, in the writing. So they have many others. So you are welcome to bring in and also send the message to me. I will try to incorporate in our project. Phil, please.
Yeah, well, I'm not a scholar of Schopenhauer by any means, but it seems to me, you know, Western thinking by the late 18th century and certainly into the 19th century was already beginning to criticize sort of this objective analytical thinking. And it seems to me it began with Schiller and Blake. And I think at that moment it was ready to receive the inner spirit, which is essentially romanticism. And I think of Schopenhauer as essentially a certain type of romantic thinker. You know, I mean, he was very close to Wagner. And in a sense, so the will becomes, in a sense, the expression of the spirit, the inner spirit in relationship to the external world. So it was more like that moment was ready to receive a certain kind of inner calling. And I don't think he was directly, although maybe he did accept, you know, Eastern thinking to a certain degree. I think it was that he opened the way via romanticism into Western thought, you know, followed by people like Hegel, you know, and then Nietzsche. So I think he was more involved in Western thinking as opening in a new direction rather than a direct tie to Western philosophy, which, you know, the Theosophy movement sort of came slightly later, but it was really part of the Romantic movement as much as Eastern thinking.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. Yeah, I think that's very insightful. And thank you. Okay, so let's move on to the next part. We talk about so this one probably more related to our today's life. And I believe today probably everybody heard. You probably don't know Buddhism much, but I will assume everybody heard about the mindfulness meditation, right? Is anybody never heard about this? Oh. Yeah. So I think here, according to the author, the Krishnamurti, okay, he is the person, Jiddu, right? Jiddu Krishnamurti, you know, he introduced the, unlike Schopenhauer, he just, you know, like Phil said, the romantic movement start to look around, and or like Eliot, you know, after First World War, he's looking for some other solution, you know, kind of the palliation, okay, from a different culture. And then, in my opinion, and same as in the author talking about the Jiddu Krishnamurti, okay, he kind of introduced the mindfulness meditation. Okay, he talk about is talking for the inner peace, and he looking up for the enlightenment on someone else. He said, adding that inner peace could only come through self-knowledge, but obtaining that was an extremely difficult task. Okay, so I just like to remind everyone is this kind of meditation originally is from the Theravada school. Okay, not from Mahayana. Mahayana kind of put less focus on the mindful meditation. So that's the meditation start to, this kind of concept start to come to America. Any comment, or anybody don't know the mindful meditation, you can ask, but you know, so you know, that's the point. No? Okay, so let's talk about Zen Buddhism. Okay, so Suzuki, okay, in his work, that's in 1920 something, okay, before the Second World War, okay, Dr. Suzuki, okay, Taiseku Suzuki, in his work, he gives scant attention to the concept of the reincarnation or nirvana. Okay, so he instead of, so we have to remember the Zen Buddhism from Suzuki, he doesn't represent the entire Buddhism school. He also not represent the Mahayana Buddhism school. He even not represent the Zen school, okay? Even not the Zen school in Japan. He only represent his own view okay, of the Zen Buddhism. Okay, well, I think we have to put this one in mind. So if you, because today's Zen in America, basically it starts from the Suzuki, okay, from Dr. Suzuki. He brings his own idea. He hardly talk about the samsara, the reincarnation. He's not talking about nirvana, okay. He only talk about the immediate here and the now, okay. So that's the concept people constantly talk about, which is start from Suzuki, okay. So like a flash of lightning, the moment was caught in thousands of aphorisms and chose haikus, right? Haikus is kind of a poem, and I hope one day we can introduce the haikus. That's a Japanese writing. By the middle of the 20th century, blah, 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 and he focused on the lived moment and going with the flow. I think most of people understand the Buddhism actually is from this writing, from Suzuki's idea of the Zen Buddhism. Any comment on this one before we move to Dalai Lama? Madeline, please.
Yeah, Suzuki was also my first introduction to Buddhism. I guess I picked it up when I was a teenager. I'd say, just to place it in context for those whose experience is mostly Western, it would be as if Zen were kind of like a Quaker silent meeting. And if that was the form of Protestantism and Christianity that had spread around the world and become popularized, there would be vast swaths of Christians whose experience of Christianity was different from that. And so that might be the best parallel in terms of civilization transplant. And also that, again, someone, I think Jason or Pin had made the point earlier that most practicing Buddhists are not Zen Buddhists or Chan Buddhists, and that Buddhism is, as they practice it, is embedded in a rich cultural tradition of incense burning, of ancestor worship. There's a whole cosmology involved. It's very rich in images and symbols, and there's a whole many sort of languages about it. So Zen, which is what most of us know, has been abstracted from that as something, and mindfulness meditation in particular, as a technique that can be used, but it's been deracinated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so if you ask people in America about Buddhism, I think most of people will tell you about, at least they know about Zen. Okay, but in, let's say, I don't know about other places, let's say in Taiwan, probably not much people talking about, if they claim they are Buddhism, probably they don't talk about Zen Buddhism, okay, or talk about Zen that much. So it's very diverse and depend on who you speak to. So the purpose of today's, I just want to let people know is how wide, how different, okay, different interpretation in Buddhism. So we have Phil and Sujit. Phil, please.
Yeah, this is more of a, in a way, a question. It seems to me if Buddhism doesn't have any really truly hardened doctrines, I mean, it has sutras, and it seems to be more adaptive to a local situation. So therefore, it's always to a certain degree transformative to the environment. It seems to me when you are that transformative, there seems to be a mutual influence between the local environment in which you interact with and is transforming, and it transforming you as well. So it seems to me, by the time of the 20th century, certainly, I mean, this is more the part of the question. It seems to me Zen Buddhism in that way has been influenced by this sort of like Western creative individualism that's tied to an experience in the world. So it seems to me that that sort of Zen moment, it has to do with individual insight into the world that's transformative. So would you say that the reason why I was sort of so receptive to the Western thinking was that it was already adapted to Western thinking, that it was therefore much more digestible and understood, and became the basis of, Western Buddhism in a way. So the foundation of that. So that seems interesting because when you're transforming something, it also transforms you back.
Yeah, I have to agree. If you look at the origin, right, it starts from India, right? And then it got popular in China. And the Zen, okay, I believe it's originated from China because the Taoism, okay, the Chinese Taoism. And then moved to Japan. And Japan had a Shindo. And then they kind of like mix together and then get a different flavor. Suzuki came to America and he just kind of not focus on nirvana reincarnation, which is the key, considered as the key core teaching of Buddhism. So you can think about like you are not teaching the core essence, okay, the core principle of Buddhism. So he just stay outside. So that's the way it happened, and then that's why today's subject, we will see, go through every single movement in America. You will see how different Buddhism has been used.
Well, it seems to me in the 1920s, I mean, I'm not sure of the exact date, but that's roughly the time of Heidegger. I mean, his teaching seems to be resemble Zen to a certain degree. So I wonder whether there was not a mutual forward and backward influence.
Yeah, we can talk about this one later, because that's a big subject. Yeah, so yes, from time to time, people talk about Heidegger and the Zen. And Heidegger also talk about Buddhism, I know, yeah, but I didn't read it, I don't know the detail. So we have a few hands up, then let's reorganize the order. Let's have Sujit, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, there's a really good book by Suzuki called The Beginner's Mindset, I believe. That's the name of the book. That is a book that I read for the first time, and it was super interesting to see Zen Buddhism's perspective on topics, essentially. So like how there's a very popular quote from that book saying that in the mind of the expert, in the mind of the beginner, there's a lot of opportunities, but in the mind of the expert, there's few. And that kind of shows you, like, how your perspective narrows as you gain more and more experience, or you think you've gained a lot of expertise. It limits you limit yourself in certain ways of perception. So I found that as a very I found that very critical in terms of like going about living life, and also like your perspective towards work, relationships, and even like accepting new knowledge. So yeah.
Jason, just quickly, that's not DT Suzuki, that's Shunryu Suzuki. It's a different Suzuki.
Really? Oh, sorry. Yeah. That's Shunryu Suzuki, I think. Yeah.
Oh, that's a different Suzuki. Okay, thank you, Joe. Who is the next one? Let's go from Loanne, Kevin, and Claudia. Okay. Sorry if I made the order wrong, but
Hi, this is Loanne.
Yeah,
I really like Phil's the way he mentioned earlier how Buddhism is transforming and how it's brought to the West and is being more individual. I believe he said the word individual or individualized. And I think that's a great thing for the progression of Buddhism, for it to sustain, because if Buddhism was in the old, like what you said, Jason, in the elders, what was that branch? The elders.
Yeah, that's Theravada.
Yeah. If there was that branch, it would be very difficult to follow, and it would not make Buddhism as modern as it is now, where with that modernism, I feel like there's a lot of more interest and a lot of for the religion or the philosophy to survive. I think
the individualism, that's the reason that got popular in the West, because even the Theravada, okay, still individualism, okay, compared to other religions. Okay, so only the Vajrayana, okay, the Dalai Lama's school, the Tantric Buddhism is more organized, but you will see later Dalai Lama is not focused on the structure. Okay, he focused on the essence, the moral teaching. So that's why it got popular in the Western. So we have a lot of hands up. Then I have Kevin and Claudia. Kevin, please.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's a question. What I would learn from the Western. How do you classify the North China? We call the Ha like Buddhism, and compared to Tibet Buddhism. From that category, from the Wu Tai Shan in Shanxi, what their belief, like which branch they are, like it's not fitting in your category here. Maybe this is from Western view. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay, it's very difficult because I think I said at the beginning, that's just roughly categorized. So if I just, I think Rupana asked me to draw a picture or something like introduce all the school, I refuse to do so because turn out it would be just like somebody talked about this, very individualism, right? So whenever I draw school, then you will find out, so, hey, how about this one? How about this one? Then turn out every single person have their own school. So that's my personal observation. So that's a big question.
Can I follow? Is the Ha like Buddhism in Ha ethnic?
Han,
like, yeah, compared to Tibet.
Han is ethnic, not the religion, right? So Tibet, basically, they believe different kind of Buddhism. That's Vajrayana, and most of Chinese or Eastern Asian belief is Mahayana. If you go to Thai, Cambodia, okay, and Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka, and they are the Theravada. Okay, so there's a difference, but again, there's a roughly, and you can take
very quick. Ru Si Dao, that means which part? Like we going to general Buddhist?
Okay, Shi means Shikamuni. Okay, Shikamuni is his family name. So in general, we call Shi. We use for the people who become a monk. They renounce their family, right? So they will adapt Shi. Okay. Sakyamuni, okay, as their last name. Okay, so basically we will say Ru Shi Dao. Basically means Ru means Confucianism, Shi means Buddhism, Dao means Taoism. So that's three concepts have been run deep in the Chinese culture, or most of the Eastern intellectual, like including Korean, Japan. So Claudia and Pim, please.
Yes, no, but I want to refer what Phil said earlier, that Buddhism or Zen Buddhism is very transformative. It can adopt to the different regions or localities and have different versions and flavors. Yeah, I guess it makes sense because, it's, democracy, that's the way it is when you have a democracy and you have freedom of thought, freedom to worship, and individualism comes out of democracy. Without democracy, the individual wouldn't be possible. But I believe Christianity and Judaism follow the kind of like a similar path, although not precisely the same, with Christianity with its different denominations, right? Once it broke out from Catholicism, and Judaism too, after the Enlightenment, it broke out of the Orthodox Judaism. You got Reformed Judaism and many other types of Judaism. So I guess it's natural, I guess, normal for that to happen in democracies, right? And it's particularly after the Enlightenment and when you have freedom. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and one thing I'd like to mention is Buddhism probably have no concept of heresy. right? So everybody is heresy. It belongs to kind of a heresy. So that's an interesting part. Pin and Thai. Pin, please.
Just to answer part of Kevin's question, I did a quick search while he was asking. So Wu Tai Shan has several temples, major temples representing different sects, including 2 of them represent different branches of Tibetan Buddhism.
Yeah, Wu Tai Shan is very rich. They have it's also include the Tibet. Yeah, and even so for example, famous Shaolin Temple. Okay, everybody know the Kung Fu from Shaolin Temple. It should be the Zen Buddhism, but if you look at what they are doing, how can we do the martial art? Okay, that's another long story. Okay, let me stop here. So, Thai, please.
Hey everyone, I'm not sure if you can actually hear me right now because I had to get away from my apartment.
You have the background music.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had to get away from my apartment. I had a quick question. Just hang on, let me find, what is your thought on the Chung Tai Chan school there in Taiwan, particularly as to their practice of tithing during, I would say, death ceremonies, and just the nomenclature, say master to abbot and abbess and the like. Sorry for the loud music.
Okay, sorry, I'm not familiar with this school. Actually, I'm not here rightly. So if everybody know, you can answer. But I believe
Can you type the name of the sect you mentioned in the chat?
Yeah, and I probably know, if you type it, but it's not related to now and that, okay. Anything about Zen, Suzuki? Otherwise, I'm going to move to Dalai Lama. Rupana, please.
Jason, are you a practicing Buddhist? You and Ping? No, I was just curious.
I'm not.
Okay.
Okay. So it's a difficult answer. Okay. So I do the thing family require me to do. Okay. So I have my own thought. So we can talk about this one later. Yeah, you will know later before. And I claim myself is Zen Buddhism, but the friend who practices Zen Buddhism say I'm talking about is so-called oral Zen. Okay. 口头禅, okay. I only talk about it. I never practice. So depend how you want to talk about it.
I have two of my brothers practice Tibetan Buddhism, and my dad identified sometimes as a Buddhist, but he didn't practice anything.
Yeah, so Buddhism allow you to not practice. So that's the good part on that. So okay, so let's move on. Okay. Let's talk about Dalai Lama. I think Dalai Lama also get a Nobel Peace Prize, right? And then he is belong to the school of in the Tibet, which is so-called Vajrayana, okay, which means diamond school. So which is mix of Mahayana and the Theravada, because Mahayana not focus much on the meditation, and the Theravada, Tibetan school, they do a lot of meditation. Okay, but when he come to America, he probably promote more on the compassion and the continual practice and the relentless application. Okay, his transformation is made possible through the training. Okay, so it's not like Zen Buddhism, you can quickly sudden enlightenment. You need to practice, and that's his idea. And he as a Dalai Lama, as long as I know, he is very scientific, okay, man, and then he focuses on scientific and the spiritual. Okay, and he been a lot of teaching, and also again his political situation that also make him popular, and his personality. So anybody want to think to share about Dalai Lama or Dalai Lama's teaching? And today's Dalai Lama is the, I think the 13th Dalai Lama, because they believe the reborn, okay, reincarnation. So he is actually is the incarnated from Buddhist travel. So, and another Lama, the second important is Panchen, right? He's in China. We don't know where he is, and Dalai Lama escaped. And the Dalai Lama, according to the Tibetan system, Dalai Lama is not only the spiritual or religious leader, also the political leader, based on tradition. So that's the, and he come to America, and he come to Western world, he been preach a lot, but he's not preaching the Buddhism, but he preaches Buddhism, but he's more focused on the compassion, on the human side. That's he's talking about. Any comment, Dalai Lama? And anybody have anything want to share about the Dalai Lama?
Yeah, I want to say something. Yeah, hi.
Please, yeah.
Yeah, I actually read his book, I think, about happiness, which is very good actually. Yeah. So it's it's an interview with him, I think it's American write it. But anyway, because I grew up in mainland China, we have learned all the negative things about that Dalai Lama. So when I was in China, so I always have this totally different image of him. But when I read his book, it's very different. You know, he's very peaceful. He's have all this great insight about how to achieve happiness. So it's totally changed my view of him through that book.
Yeah,
but I heard.
Yeah, I read this book. I didn't read all of that. I read the first chapter. He talked about define what's the happiness. And he said, I remember, and I read I remember he talked about like some people define the happiness is I make 100,000 more than my brother-in-law. So, so that means happiness. So that's what he is talking about. So
yeah,
he's very
I heard something about him. Not sure it's real. I heard the doctor ordered him to eat meat to survive. Have you heard of that?
No, okay. Tibetan Buddhism eat meat, but they don't eat. Okay, they eat meat because it's not possible to be vegetarian if you stay in the Tibet, right? That's no way. So you have to adopt this kind of thinking. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have another hands up. That's stuff from Audrey, Madeline, Phil, and Claudia. Yeah. Okay, Audrey, please.
Well, basically, I was studying Dzogchen, which I read a book from the Dalai Lama and got teachings from him on Dzogchen, which is a little different than Vajrayana, but it's basically about how can I put this in? I'm just going to read this. It's like basically it's discovering the ultimate ground of existence. The primordial ground is said to have qualities of purity, which a lot of people would say is similar to what the Tibetans mean by emptiness, at least Tibetans that come to the West, and spontaneity associated with luminous clarity, and then compassion. And all of this, the three of these together, is the knowledge of its Rigpa. And I can't really explain it because I've never been part of the sanghas that I'm part of. We're very focused on practice. So you can't have any of this without cultivating your mind and cultivating things. So it's totally focused on practice, which I think is what the Dalai Lama is saying here when he's talking about training. You have to work with it. And as well as the humanist ethical part of it and the science.
Yeah, thank you, Audrey. Yeah, and there's one time I tried to understand the Vajrayana. Okay, so then I find out Vajrayana, inside Vajrayana also have many different schools. Okay, 5 major schools, depend on the color, yellow, flower, and the red. And between the color, they have the black. Yeah, I also got lost. So you will see how complex, how impossible, for at least for me, to just lay out a map, okay, of all different kind of school. Because even in the Vajrayana school, I also have many different kinds. And I think Dalai Lama belong to the yellow, right? I think so. Yeah. Okay. So who's the next one? Madeline and Madeline, please.
Okay.
Sorry if I. Yeah. So
Okay. I was very interested in what Gung said, and I was wondering, Gung, if you feel comfortable with it, could you give us just some idea of how the Dalai Lama was presented in mainland China? Because we only really have one view of it here in the West. Was he seen as a like breakaway political rebel, or was it that he insisted on adhering to religion when religion was frowned upon in China?
Yeah, I think because I think Chinese government raised a different leader in Tibetan, right? He's a spiritual leader. Then they think it's a danger of break away from the government. I think that's maybe the reason he was exiled. He went exiled. Then they have a different leader for Tibetan.
And
I think it's more the politics than religion.
What was the kind of impression of him that you were given?
I never read his book before. We learned it's like he tried to, we have one China policy, and he tried to like break down the country, all this stuff. So I don't know. Okay. It's just like you just had a negative thing about him. I don't know exactly who he is.
So he has been, okay, let's stop this conversation. He has been viewed in China as a separatist for the independent of Tibetan. So, and again, they have the Muslim, and I also try to bring the Chinese Muslim lecture here, but I haven't been successful, but I'm working on that. And then different countries like Taiwan also have the independence movement, and then so that's political.
Yeah, I think for philosophy, it's best to stay away from politics. And it's all very complicated.
It's a very complex.
Frankly, it's not something we can really discuss here. Yeah.
But we can discuss, but there's no solution.
There is a whole realm of political theory and political philosophy, but I guess we don't go there right now with this.
Okay, sorry, let's don't go too far away. Not because we don't want to talk about this one, because we should focus on this one. Then one day I bring the independence, Taiwan independence subject, then we can talk about this. Phil and Claudia, please.
Yeah, I like the Dalai Lama, but I also like Zen, which is sort of interesting.
That's fine.
I like the Dalai Lama because of the concept of compassion, and that seemed more different from the original Buddhism, which is sort of like suffering and escaping suffering. In fact, you are almost embracing suffering in a way, because the Bodhisattva is in some ways held higher than the Buddha, because he is willing to sacrifice himself in terms of suffering to, in a sense, bring along some compassion to others who are suffering. So in a sense, delaying gratification of your mind. And whereas Zen seems to be, I think of it as almost like iconoclastic, because it seemed to like refute any kind of tradition, almost like Dadaism, because I think of it him like them as like more like John Cage, which is sort of like more about an individual achieving a certain kind of dissonance from the tradition. And so that's kind of interesting, the different blends. I suppose in a way you could say the Dalai Lama in refuting, not refuting, but transforming the traditional thing about samsara is that it really is a paradox from the original form. So is Zen, and so is Zen from the Dalai Lama, because it seems like it's a paradox that can't be healed, except maybe through the individual action. So I don't know. It just seems interesting that it's so diverse.
Yeah, that's different. And then I'd like to mention is about the compassion. Okay, according to the tradition, Dalai Lama is the reincarnation of so-called Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, which is Guan Yin in Chinese. His reincarnation for this Buddha, the Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. Okay, so this Buddha, okay, so-called Guan Yin in Chinese, is compassion, because this Buddha, he already in nirvana, so he away from the suffering, but he come back to the secular world because he healed, okay, the suffering for everyone. So he come here with compassion. So when a lot of time you see the Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, okay, in Taiwan or in China, okay, they become a female figure, okay, because compassion. So one person told me, he did a lot of research on the religion. He told me in Vietnam, okay, oh no, not in Vietnam, okay, because they change figure to female, become more compassion. Okay, that's a long story. I'm not going to talk about this now. Okay, so so it's compassion is in the Buddhist, at least in the Mahayana teaching, but not being focused so much. Claudia and Loen, please. Claudia, thank you for waiting.
Yes, thank you. Well, this notion of compassion residing at the center of morality, you know, one can see it as kind of like a feminine attribute, but others can see it as, you know, it's noble and beautiful, first of all, but one can see it as like a high level of human evolution, a high level, right? Like beyond the, you know, beyond the cutthroat competition of death and struggle and destroying your competitors, right? Because we've advanced past that right now, right? Although the lower animals, the lower life forms, are still stuck in that physical realm, but you know, cutthroat competition. On the other hand, the illumination aspect of Buddhism can also be interpreted as a high level of evolution too, because right, that also goes beyond the low physical world, right, of survival, struggle, right? It's a higher level, it's spiritual, right? So in a way, we get transferred from a physical material needs to spiritual needs. And you can't have that at a lower level of human evolution, right? Because spirituality evolved much later. So I like this notion of compassion. It's really I think it's noble, and it's beautiful. It goes past our ancient ancestors. It's at the high level. Thank you.
Thank you.
I only disagree with that in the sense that we have not progressed beyond that. So that's my disagreement.
But this encourages it, though. We're capable of doing it. Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that part.
All right, thank you. Okay, Loen, please.
I thought I was unmuted. Okay. Now on the goddess of compassion, Jason, as what you were saying, that god is originally a male, but he took female form.
Sorry. Okay, Loen.
Yeah, you hear me?
No. Okay, what I talk about. Okay, I'm not saying that he take a female form. I talk about the Avalokiteshvara, which is Guan Yin called in China. Okay. In Chinese. Okay. This one is a Buddha, which is not a Buddha, it's a Buddhist Strava. Okay. So Buddhist Strava is some it's not God, it's not spirit, it's some figure, okay, let's say some figure, some person who already achieved, okay, nirvana, okay, which is not suffering anymore. But he come back, okay, from nirvana to the secular world to help, okay. So that's the Bodhisattva, okay. So Dalai Lama is a reincarnation. It's take a form of it's a Bodhisattva, take the form as a person. But as a deity, okay, the Bodhisattva, we make a sculpture, right? And in China, or especially in the southern part of China or Taiwan, take a female figure on that. I'm not saying Dalai Lama take a female figure or something like this. Am I clear? Or?
Yeah, would you say that's comparable to taking a female form as a representation that compassion is motherly, just like how we say Earth is Mother Earth? Not saying mother are not compassionate, but you see that quality more in a mother.
Yeah, I see this way. Yeah, I see this way because when I grew up in Taiwan, I thought, you know, the Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva is female. Okay, but later on I know it's not female. So.
Yeah, it is confusing. I remember when I was young in Taiwan, I was always told Guanxin Pusa is a man.
Man
but
yeah.
a male, but
yeah.
looks like a female. So it's I never really understood that. I was just told, you know, actually as a man, as a male, but not a man, but a male. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, in the Taipei, they have a place, a mountain called the Guanyin San, the mountain of Guanyin. Okay, it's a female. Okay, you can see the face and the breast. You know, it's a female. Okay, so you know that's how confused. Okay, we have a lot of hands up, and we have the Rubena, Nari, and Theo. Rubena, please.
Okay, because I come from a very tradition that's very simple. One God, multiple messengers, and that's it. So for me, it's kind of confusing. So Buddhism, on one hand, let me bear with me. On one hand, the temple people worship their ancestors and other gods or the knights, as I think someone mentioned. And then on the other hand, Buddhism is also going into working on oneself to be above suffering, where suffering and other things don't touch you.
Okay. Yeah, just okay. So ancestor, don't mix with that. Ancestor is a different. Okay, it's not put in the Buddhism. That's a traditional Chinese practice. Okay, that's a different thing. Okay, even I think a lot of Christian even worship the ancestor. Okay, so that's it's a complex situation. Can you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to try to deconvolve these things. I think, Rubana, you're mixing a few things together. Maybe I can categorize into three different things. There's indigenous Chinese spirituality. So that's when you are talking about ancestor worship. That's separate from Buddhism. And there's also Taoism. So and then there's Buddhism in China. So, and the temples there are a lot of temples all over China, and they can be Buddhist temples or Taoist temples. From the outside, they look exactly the same, but you can tell by the name. If it's something gong, like something palace, that's a Taoist temple. If it's a si, and then it's a Buddhist temple. And many temples actually mix Taoism and Buddhism. They have deities from both religions together. Yeah,
they mix together. And then the best way to understand is read the novel called The Journey to the West. Okay, talk about Monkey King and the Xuanzang, the monk went to India, and then that one give you a good identify of the different deities, just like reading the Greek mythology, you will see how many gods you have. So that's very complex. So we have a Phil and a Nari, please. Phil.
To me, I understand Guanyin as two things in this way. It seems to me that transformation from the male to the female was a longer process than just overnight. Suddenly he became a female. I think particularly in Chinese garb, you could see how the males in this robe could be more swirling and eventually became more female. The other way I understand it is that within any individual, whether you're male or female, there is actually a kind of a mix between male and female. So therefore, I don't think you could just sort of say, oh, now he's a woman. I mean, it's like, because we're all capable of this sort of feminine quality as well as the masculine quality. So I think of those two things allow me to see the transformation in a more gliding path rather than a kind of like suddenly, like one day you woke up and like, what happened? That sort of thing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay, so we have Nari and Madari. Nari, please.
Yeah, so the Hindu god Shiva, you see a picture of this god. It's half woman and half man. And it's because they recognize the energies between the feminine and the masculine. And it's important that they balance it. So, and they go on to saying that when you attain consciousness, you see people as beings, not as gender, male or female. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. And if I'm not wrong, I remember the Islamic God Allah. Allah, when we mention, we not use he or she. It's genderless. I think that's what I know. So it's not fair to give the gender to a God. So, Mandarin, please.
Often when religions went from one region to another, back in eras when there were indigenous animist gods from very old traditions, some of the animist gods got sort of adopted. So say in Ireland, there's Saint Bridget, Ireland and England, there's Saint Bridget, who was actually an older goddess in their mythology that got kind of converted into a Catholic saint. And so the same thing may have happened with Kuan Yin. It may have been that the Avaloki, can't think of the whole name right now, that got imported over because of his quality of compassion, got localized as a female because there was already a female animist goddess of compassion in China.
Yeah, it's very possible, but I have no research on this. But everything's like this. Yeah. So should we move on? Okay, we have done. Let's talk about I think we are doing very good on the time. So I'm pretty good job today. So, okay, let's talk about the last part about Buddhism. So right now we are away from religion. So I think this one also important, talk about mindfulness-based stress therapy. Okay, so I put this one because I know in the NIH or in the CDC website, they also talk about meditation. So right now, technically in the official way of therapy is mindful meditation. And I belong to the UCLA Medical Health Center, and they also teach mindfulness meditation as alleviate and cure depression and anxiety. So it become one way of teaching. So Buddhism is being transformed from the religion, okay, in the life, and right now become a therapy. So here I like to read the, I think that's one important philosophical part I think is quite interesting. Part of its method consists in art of creating a gap in experience so that the individual can separate himself from his own involuntary reaction and not be determined by them. CBC, that's the, what's that? CBC cultivate freedom in a very act of focused attention. I'm other than my reaction. So basics is teaching you to get rid of the depression and anxiety, and then through the meditation, and you observe the world without withholding of judgment, okay? And then I'm other than myself. So basically that's the concept of the mindful meditation. I believe probably some of you have experience or know something about the mindful meditation. It is welcome to share if you have anything about mindful meditation. No,
I think when you do yoga class, it's often very mindful and yeah.
I'm not sure yoga is in Hinduism. So okay, okay, we can talk about yoga next time. Okay, Loan has a hands up. Loan, please.
I was actually going to agree with Jimmy that yoga is a form of meditation because it's a concentrated activity where it puts you in the present moment, the here and the now. Just like with a Shaolin temple, when the monks are practicing martial art, I also believe that is a form of meditation as well. I mean, it's hybrid, it's physical activity, but it's also concentrated activity where it puts you in the present.
Yeah, I think yoga is interesting. Yeah, okay. I did on October 2nd, we are going to Bhagavad Gita. Okay, we used to talk about yoga. Okay, so we will have an interesting discussion if you still, you are interested compared to yoga and mindful meditation, and that's a good subject to talk about. Claudia, Audrey, and Phil. Claudia, please.
Yes, I find this very interesting. So mindfulness, Buddhism as therapy. So it alleviates and even cures, in some cases, cures depression and anxiety. That's great because apparently it seems like it's a natural way of doing it, because we know that depression and anxiety are due to low levels, I believe, of serotonin and perhaps dopamine, right? So it suggests
that's the brain chemicals.
A chemical imbalance, right? So this is a natural way to do it. Other alternatives are like antidepressants and I believe a compound of magic mushroom, psilocybin, right? And other psychedelics. So, so am I correct that it actually increases those levels? Does anybody know? Because this would be a healthy way of increasing those levels rather than going through drugs, right? And not just that, not for me. I'm not saying for me, but for people in general. I'm I'm not suffering from these ailments. So yeah, interesting. Thank you.
So anybody have a medical background? Want to have a quick answer to Claudia?
I no. So I do have a little bit, but
yeah, please.
I just wanted to. They did a study with the Tibetan monks, and in meditation, their theta, the waves in their brains were, they were producing a lot of serotonin, like they were in a happy state. because of this meditation that they've been doing. So they have scientifically proven that.
Yeah, I read this one. There's one Tibetan monk. He's French, and his name is Matthew Ricard. If you search, he has been identified the happiest person in the world because they do the brain scan, and then they get a certain pattern as the happiness, and the second person is not happy, and they find out that the Tibetan monk usually belong to the happy side. And there's one guy called Matthew Ricard. And if you search on that, he's been identified the happiest person in the world. So he's a French convert to Tibetan monk. So, okay, so we have a lot of hands up. Audrey and Phil, Madeline, please. Yeah, Audrey.
Well, I've practiced Buddhist meditation and mindfulness. And when I'm reading here under the Buddhist therapy section, where it says, because I had this highlighted also, the project was committed to using the many techniques of Buddhist meditation and mindfulness to alleviate and even cure depression and anxiety. I believe that's true, and I've heard about that study that Nari mentioned. But I'm also thinking that in actual sitting meditation, when your teacher, as a Buddhist, if your Buddhist teacher tells you, it's time to do your shamatha practice, it's what is down further in the next paragraph where they're talking more about cognitive behavior therapy, being directly shaped by Buddhism, where you cultivate a freedom in the very act of focused attention. I am other than my reactions. I can look at them and I can let them go. And that particular practice is regular shamatha with your breath. You would breathe out, you would be sitting there, say, and for a moment, you start to see your whole, you start this dialogue with yourself or whatever, it just goes past you. And you're looking at it, and say you're getting totally excited or very angry or whatever it's happening, then that gap happens if you're practicing, and you can look at it and say, I'm just sitting here. I'm creating this. This is a projection of my mind. And then you have that gap that can also say, I don't have to do that. And you breathe it out, and it's like that kind of a practice and constantly working. I could imagine that the CBT actually helps people if they do that, but the investigation is crucial. It's not just focused.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you, Audrey, to share your experience. Yeah. So let's go to Madeline, Phil, and Sarah. Madeline, please.
Yes, two things. The first one, excuse me, I had put in chat, which is basically that for people with trauma in their background, mindfulness meditation can be very difficult or basically impossible. And so if you keep trying and feel like you're failing at it, that could be the reason. And so it is actually recommended for people with trauma that movement meditations that bring together the mind and the body are better. So something like Tai Chi or Qigong or yoga, Hatha yoga, are recommended. The other thing was an incredibly interesting study I came across recently. The easiest place to find a summary of it online is in the BBC online news in their work life section. It's from August 16th. A psychologist did a study looking at whether the effects of mindfulness would depend on its cultural context. And he was looking at people who take an independent viewpoint focused on personal characteristics. So that would be the Western viewpoint. If you're asked to describe yourself, you might say, I'm intelligent, or I have a sense of humor. The more Eastern approach, called interdependence, would be in terms of your relationships to others. So you might say, I'm a daughter or a father or a student. So in general, the interdependence is going to be higher in the Asian countries. So he had two groups do the meditation, then mindfulness meditation, Then he gave them an opportunity to stuff envelopes on a charitable basis without pay. He found that the effects of the meditation made the interdependent people more willing to spend time on the task. The independent-minded people were more self-centered and less willing to stuff envelopes to help the homeless. So it basically, then he did some other things as well. Sorry about that. Some other tests about that. There's also a book called Mindfulness, How Mindfulness Became the New Capitalist Spirituality. So for those who are interested in looking at mindfulness from various directions, whether it's promotes narcissism or whatever it is, there are a lot of sources out there that are criticizing it, not because it is Buddhist, but because of the way it is practiced in the West, basically without the context it came from.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have 5 minutes left. Let's go quickly. Okay, so Phil, Sarah, and Pin, please. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a positive thing in relation to psychology, but I think ultimately I believe it is negative in terms of sociology. It reminds me of Marx's statement, religion is the opiate of the people. The reason why I'm sort of offended by its practice in societies this way, instead of treating the cause, you're treating the symptom. A symptom that's produced by the society in general. If we have a sick society, it produces sick people that needs help. Instead of changing the structure of society so people are no longer sick and they don't need this, they only need meditation for a spiritual awakening rather than a sort of cure to the disease that we produce. This is the cycle that is repeated in society and is actually ultimately dangerous because it's curing the symptoms in order to go back to society, that then you suffer the symptom again, and over it becomes a cycle of production rather than a cycle of actually curing. So I have mixed feelings about it.
Okay, we respect your feeling, yeah, but next time we
Thank
talk
you.
about.
Yeah, so I'm just going to add on because it's my turn anyway, real quick. I think he's actually the person that just spoke. I think he's missing maybe a point of Buddhism, which is the individual reaching a certain level of consciousness. And I think the only way to remedy on a macro level is to start at the individual. And I think that's a huge tenet in Buddhism. In fact, I know for a fact it is. It's about the individual reaching that consciousness. And I think we can only start there. So it's not putting a Band-Aid on it. It's the starting point of it. So I just wanted to add that in real quick. I think that's very important. It sounds like you missed a huge tenet of Buddhism with that, of the purpose of Buddhism, or one of the many. But I also just wanted to go back to what Audrey was saying, that when you do something like meditation or yoga, it changes the chemical waves in your brain if you train yourself to do it and to be able to reach that level. And I think inevitably it increases the energetic frequencies of someone's entire chemical makeup. And I think that's how I think yoga and meditation ties into Buddhism, which is the individual reaching a certain level of consciousness, which is separate and alone. However, the results of it can be shown if you allow them to be within your interactions with other people. And that's how it gets to be a macro level. That's how it reaches the macro level of society. It starts with the individual. I just wanted to point that out.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, so today we talk about Buddhism. Okay, so next time we talk about the social issue, then we can have a different discussion on that. So thank you, Phil. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, let's move to Claudia, please. You want to say something?
Yeah, very quickly. You know what Phil said. He said something really deep or profound, but I don't know whether to agree or disagree. But Buddhism does appear to help people, right? It reduces stress, and so it makes them more productive in society. It cures or relieves depression and anxiety. So it does tackle the cause. It raises the chemical. It solves the chemical imbalance. So it does tackle the cause in that way. So I think it has a positive effect. It appears to have a positive effect overall, individually and also on a macro level society, because it helps people, it makes them, and it reinitializes their mental states, so it makes them stronger mentally. So hence it makes them also more productive, right? Even regarding to relationships, the economy, their work, etc. So I don't know, but you'd have to do more investigation, I guess. But I don't know. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I just have to say, you know, Phil make a fair point to me, you know, because being general criticized about Buddhism is not enough social wellness. But today have a few movement. One thing I know is in Taiwan, the so-called 慈济, they start to go outside, become more secular. Because Buddhism, that's my point of view, more individualism, which is right to fix yourself, just like Claudio talked about and Sarah talked about. You fix the individual and start from individual. But again, if you do too much individual, you forget about social movement. So like different than Christian. Christian has more on the social movement side than the individual. So which one is more important? Which one is right? I don't think we should discuss today. So we are toward to the end. I just want to share the last one as Mahapunama Sutta, okay, which is probably not people familiar with Mahayana, not familiar with this one. This one is, I think that's my personal feeling. This one is the Buddha's teaching, the Gautama Buddha, the original, the person. The original teaching is belong to the Theravada school. The teaching. I think that's the mindfulness meditation coming from. So basically, he says one see all material forms as it actually with proper wisdom. Okay, so the Buddha said, "This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself." So basically, separate yourself and your body, your experience, and create a gap. Okay, just like I have this feeling of not really being here. Just I think Audrey talked about this. You know, you suffering, your body suffering. So that's the Buddha's teaching, and I believe, I believe the mindfulness meditation is original from this one.
So Jason, is that a precursor to the Heart Sutra, where it says no hands, no no nose, no.
Oh, okay, hold on. No. This one is before Heart Sutra. Okay, this one being viewed.
Yeah.
That's the original. And the Heart Sutra is Mahayana movement, right? Mahayana movement is 200 years, at least 200 years after the original Gautama Buddha. Okay, Shukamuni. Okay, after that. So that's kind of like revised. Okay, so the concept of the shunyata, which is emptiness,
right,
at that time. So I believe this one is before that.
Yeah, precursor. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for asking this question. So I think we should bring to the end, and I'm very happy for today's schedule because we. According to and again, I always over prepare because I don't know people's interested. So the thing I left, I will bring up, repackage and so that's the way I try to run everything, and then I hope everybody satisfied on the situation. So anything we can talk about, and then I'm going to stop the recording so people have more freedom to talk. So let's hang on for a few minutes if you want, and if you want to leave, that's fine. Okay.